It's Crystal from livingwithgastroparesis.com. Today I just wanted to review a new book for you, the Gastroparesis Healing Diet. I guess first I should say, if you're brand new to my page, I am a certified health coach. I am the author of Eating for Gastroparesis and Living Well. There we go. Living Well with Gastroparesis. I have tons of info over at livingwithgastroparesis.com. There's a 40-page free ebook to help you get started with gastroparesis management, dozens of videos, hundreds of blog posts, and lots of other resources as well. So what I want to do today is talk a little bit about this book here. And this is by Tammy Chang. When new books come out, when I published my books, they were really the only books out there about gastroparesis management. And over the last several years, there have been several more that have come out. So I just want to see, I don't know if I can see your comments, guys, so. All right, I don't know. So when I see something new, I like to take a look at it and let you know my thoughts. Because if you resonate with, okay, there we go. Hi, Julie. Thanks for commenting. If you resonate with like eating for gastroparesis and living well with gastroparesis, then I do think that you will resonate with the gastroparesis healing diet. Again, it's by Tammy Chang. So Tammy contacted me last year and asked to chat a little bit about gastroparesis, both from a personal standpoint, but mostly from a professional standpoint. Tammy does not have gastroparesis, and she was asked to write this book as someone who had written previous specialty dietary books. So gastroparesis was not her specialty. It wasn't something she was terribly familiar with. So she did a lot of research, and knowing all of that, I was really impressed by the final product of the book. It's about half, I would say about half and half of information and recipes. So it's very consistent with the comprehensive management plan that I teach. It's very much about not just diet. It's a little misleading, right? Because it's called, well, there's a couple things that I think are maybe a little bit misleading that we'll talk about. But it said, it's called the Gastroparesis Healing Diet, but it's about much more than diet. It talks about lifestyle factors that, if you're familiar with my work, we talk a lot about stress and activity, and there's information about alternative therapies in here. So it's not just about diet, but there is about half in recipes. And you can see I actually dog-eared some of the recipes myself. So some good stuff in here. There's a lot of simple things like soups, as well as entrees. There's turkey burgers, Asian-style ground pork, salmon stew, some desserts as well. So definitely some good recipes, and the information in the book is, I think for the most part, really, really quite good. You'll see in here there's interviews with other people with gastroparesis, which I thought was nice. There is an interview with me in here. A couple of things I thought were taken like a little bit out of context with my personal story, but in general I was really happy with how it came out, especially the sections that I talk about my advice for other people. So, I think this is a book worth having, especially if you resonated with, like I said, the approach that I teach, which is a comprehensive management plan. Now, I said a little bit, I think it's a little bit misleading. So the Gastroparesis Healing Diet, I saw one of the first questions on here was, does this cure gastroparesis? And I don't think anybody can make a claim that any particular diet or any particular treatment will cure gastroparesis. So I think very similar to the information that I teach, what this book does is give you a lot of really good information that can help your body to function as well as it can and to hopefully heal in whatever capacity it's able. So following the following the dietary suggestions in here will it cure gastroparesis. that itself, like, no, and I don't think that's actually the claim that Tammy makes in here at all. I think the title just might be a little confusing in that way. I'm actually quoted in here saying that food didn't cause gastroparesis, so food probably isn't going to cure gastroparesis, and I stand by that. I think if you follow my work, you know that that's kind of my approach. Food is important for symptom management, and it's extremely important for nutrition, but you know, I don't think any particular diet is a cure for gastroparesis. In most cases, you know, if gastroparesis is secondary to something that's being caused by food, then perhaps. But I want to answer some of your questions coming in about the book, so give me a second. If we have your book in your course, would you learn anything new from buying this book? Wendy, that's a really good question. If you have my course, if you have Living Well with Gastroparesis, the online course, I would say probably not. I think it's a really great condensed version of a lot of the things that I talk about. So I wrote Living Well with Gastroparesis in 2011, and my work has definitely evolved since then to include more information about alternative therapies, more information about things like FODMAPs, which I think I talked a little bit about in Living with Gastroparesis, but my work has evolved a little bit since that book, but all of that new stuff is included in the Living Well with Gastroparesis program. And then Eating for Gastroparesis, I basically rewrote the whole thing in 2014. So if you have my program, there's probably not much new in here, except she does have recipes in here that you know, are new, that I haven't put out before. And some of them sound quite good. So I would say, you know, there's that. There's the interviews with other people with gastroparesis who do give both personal insight and some personal tips, which can be important. In general, you know, there's like some questionnaires in here, but they're pretty similar to the worksheets in the Living Well with Gastroparesis program. So I think it's a great book. I really do. I think it's one of the best books that I've seen for gastroparesis, other than my own books, right? I have to say that. But I really stand behind it. I think it's great information and very consistent with the comprehensive management plan, which is the approach that I've used with clients and that I've seen to make a really significant difference. Elizabeth says, you said this book talks a lot about how stress affects GP. Does it contain new ideas for coping? New ideas for coping. It talks about, I think, kind of some of the same stuff, meditation, reducing your responsibilities. Let's see if there's anything else in here. You know, getting the proper kind of support. One thing it does that I don't know that I've said maybe specifically is it talks about the various forms of stress. So stress that can come from toxins, stress that can come from your nutrition, stress that comes from lack of sleep, stress on your body from lack of movement, as well as, you know, kind of more emotional and mental stress. So I mean, it's not a huge book, but it does pack a lot of information. So if you're looking specifically for ways to cope with stress, you know, that's just one kind of small section in here. But I would, if you're not familiar, one of the things that I keep recommending, and Elizabeth, I don't know if you're familiar with this because I can't keep track of who I've said it to and on which video. Amy Johnson, DrAmyJohnson.com is a fantastic resource for what I would consider new ways of thinking about dealing with stress. So it's not just like meditate and do yoga and take a bath, but it's actually about understanding our thinking, which makes a really big difference, or at least has for me, and that's something with the clients that I'm working with one-on-one. That's the resources that we're using to address stress at this point. Let's see. Sorry, I gotta get so close to you guys, but I gotta read your questions here. Heather says, I have both of your books and they have helped a great deal. I'm glad. My doctor unfortunately does not know too much about gastroparesis, so I've been learning from you. Yeah, that's unfortunate, Heather. You know, the motility specialists that really specialize in gastroparesis know a ton, and that's great, but they are few and far between. So depending on where you are in the country, you may definitely end up with a doctor who doesn't know a lot about gastroparesis. And I think in that case, what's important is making sure that they are open to learning from you, basically. And you know, you obviously have to do your own research and be your own advocate. But so good for you for doing what you can to learn on your own. You can probably hear my 4-year-old talking in the background. Elizabeth says, great, new name to me, I will look her up. It sounds like what my mom and I need. Yeah, Amy Johnson is amazing. After my daughter was born, I struggled a lot with anxiety to a level that I never had before. It was panic attacks and anxiety and stress, and I found Amy Johnson then, and working with her really transformed like my whole idea of stress and stress management and anxiety, and I actually trained with her to become certified in the kind of coaching that she does, because I thought it would be so important as part of gastroparesis management. So. Melissa, I just wanted to tell you thank you for all you do. I'm new to having gastroparesis, so I'm very overwhelmed. You've helped me. Oh, I'm so glad, Melissa, that has helped you. And it can be very overwhelming. I remember I was diagnosed in 2004, and I remember it was incredibly overwhelming at the time, and I would assume even more so now, because you know, there's so much more when you Google and get on the internet now. Julie, Hazel Gal is another really fabulous resource. She's a cognitive hypnotherapist in the UK. I worked with her again after my daughter was born and I was really struggling. I worked with her several times, and I think that work that I did with Hazel in combination with the work that I did with Amy, it really changed things for me. And when I think about, you know, the resolution of my gastroparesis symptoms, I don't think it was a coincidence that I was doing all of those things around that time. Douglas says, your books and writings really helped me when my GP was at its worst. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm really glad to hear that. All right, I want to make sure I didn't miss any of your questions. Does anybody else have any questions? I can stick around for a few minutes if we want to do a little bit of Q&A. Oh, speaking of Q&A, you know what I will tell you guys? Just last week, I guess, a new resource that I started with my assistant Becky, who has been training with me for about 4 years now, so I consider her kind of certified under the Living Well with Gastroparesis approach. But together we started a new support group. It's kind of a support / group coaching program, and it's ongoing. It's through a private Facebook page, and everybody in the group owns, or when they sign up for the group, they get the Living Well with Gastroparesis online program. And it's really a way to kind of do the online program at your own pace, and also be with people who are going through the same journey in a really positive, supportive, uplifting environment. So that is open now, and it's incredibly active. Twice a month I do Q&As, just like this, like live video Q&As, just for the people in the group, so you can submit questions in advance, or we do a live back and forth like this, and so that's something that everyone will have access to who's in the group. We'll do that twice a month. So you can go to livingwithgastroparesis.com and just click on group coaching and support if you want more info about that. Julie says, what's the difference between colored carrots and regular carrots? As far as I know, I haven't looked into like the actual difference. I would say probably nothing except the different phytonutrients. The colors are usually different nutrients, and I would think nothing in terms of like fiber, like nothing that's going to affect whether or not they're gastroparesis friendly, Julie. So I think the more colors you can get in your diet, obviously if you follow me, you know I'm all about the GP friendly rainbow. So yeah, I don't think the different colors are going to affect how gastroparesis friendly they are. Okay, Daphne says, Daphne, I love that name, by the way. You and your encouraging spirit and sharing your knowledge and resources saved my life. Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Daphne. I'm so happy to hear that. I'm glad you're doing so much better, and I'm glad that I could be a resource for you. I send you lots and lots of good wishes. Melissa, I have GP and I have so much bloating, it's so miserable. Yeah, Melissa, bloating is a really significant problem for people with gastroparesis, a lot of people. If you go to my website, livingwithgastroparesis.com, and just type bloating in the search bar, you'll see a couple of articles. I definitely have a video. For some people, fermentation is a problem. When your stomach digests slowly, bacteria can overgrow in the rest of the GI tract. And so fermentation can be an issue, and eating low FODMAP foods can sometimes help. The standard gastroparesis-friendly diet is really high in fermentable foods, so processed wheat products, low-fat dairy products, things like apples and pears. So sometimes when you switch to a gastroparesis-friendly diet, you might actually notice more bloating if that's a problem for you. So if you go to my website, there's definitely information there that might be helpful. Let's see, Alice. Hi Crystal, I'm newly diagnosed and have been following you. I read somewhere you mentioned they are working on new medications and doing research and making progress. Have you any updates? I don't have any specific updates. You know, a really great resource for this is the IFFGD. It's the International Foundation for Functional Gastrointestinal Motility Disorders, IFFGD.org. They're a really amazing organization, and they keep up to date on all of the new research going on, the clinical trials going on, the papers that are being presented. You can sign up to receive their newsletters, and there's always an update in there. The research is ongoing for gastroparesis, and you know, there are definitely things in the pipeline. Research funding is a big issue, and I don't know. We're not going to get political here at all, but I don't know with the new administration how NIH funding will be affected. But there is research ongoing, and IFFGD is a great place to go to find out about that. Audrey says, my doctor has told me that this constant feeling of being tired, nauseous, and pain and not being able to tolerate food is my new normal. Is that something I should just resign myself to? I would say no. I mean, I have kind of two feelings about this. I think there's a difference between being accepting of your current situation. So, you know, I think it's important to accept that in this moment, like, this is how your symptoms are, and with the tools that you have, this is how your symptoms are. And I don't think there's any use in you know, saying, oh, I wish this was different, I wish it wasn't this way, why is this, you know, happening? I think that just compounds the issue. But I don't think saying this is how it's going to be forever is helpful either, right? And definitely not worrying about, is this going to be how it's going to be forever? I think when we have different tools, when we have different knowledge, you know, things are different, and our body changes. I mean, you know, this is just an example, but I don't know if you guys can see this. I burned myself yesterday, right, on the oven. But I know that in, I don't know, whatever, a week or whatever, like, this is going to be gone, right? My body's going to heal it. It's not here forever now. And just because gastroparesis is medically incurable doesn't mean that the body doesn't have ways of repairing what's gone wrong. I was diagnosed in 2004, and I was told, you know, I should have my stomach removed, I should have, like, my colon removed, that, you know, I was going to need a feeding tube, like, all of those things. And, you know, 12 years later, or I guess almost 13 years later, none of that was ever true. And, you know, as sick as I was at one point, you know, here I am, like, 50 pounds later, you know, and thriving. So no, I don't think you have to resign that to the rest of your life. I think practicing acceptance for where you are in the moment is a helpful part. Okay, I gotta check the time, guys, just because I have an appointment. Oh, we got time. Let's answer questions. Any tips on saving money for cooking? I've been buying a ton of produce, reducing soups. It has helped a ton, but it hasn't helped my wallet. Yeah, Blythe, that's yeah, I don't necessarily have a ton of tips for that, other than, you know, definitely if you're doing organic, I would definitely check the Clean 15 or the, you know, the Dirty Dozen. Only buy things organic that are, you know, really kind of pesticide loaded. That's what I do. For soups, frozen produce is usually less expensive than fresh. You know, definitely like farmers markets, if you can join a CSA in your area, that's often a lot cheaper. Gardening or making friends with somebody who gardens, you know, I don't have any great tips. Definitely, like, my food bill went up when I started eating really good quality food. but, you know, my medical bills ended up going down. So it's, sorry, I was just reading another comment that came in. Yeah, I'll try to think if I have any more like really good tips for saving money. But I think, you know, sometimes like farmers markets and CSAs and stuff can be really great, especially for the produce part. My mom has been struggling with a flare-up that seems to spark when she caught a nasty cold. Have you experienced that? She's not taking any cold medicines. Yeah, Elizabeth, I think anything that really puts your body under more stress can impact gastroparesis, especially when you're really struggling. Definitely if it's a stomach bug, you know, and I think that makes sense, but even any kind of illness that just kind of runs your body down, I think that can affect it. And I think it's something that you have to pay really good attention to your management strategies, or your mom, I know it's for your mom, but over time. Mandy, how do you handle the teeth with GP? You're probably talking about vomiting. Definitely talk to your dentist. Let them know what you're dealing with. They will probably have some tips for you. You may have to have more regular cleanings. They may have things to help strengthen your teeth, and some tips for what to do specific to the vomiting. Definitely talk to your dentist and be really like honest about all the symptoms that you're experiencing and the impact that could have on your teeth. Julie, is Chelsea the GP pharmacist still in the field? I don't know. I haven't heard from Chelsea in a long time, and last I looked, her website wasn't up anymore. So I've been meaning to contact her. That's a good reminder, Julie. I don't know. I'll try to get in touch with Chelsea and see if she's still blogging or answering questions. Douglas says, I went 2 years symptom-free, then came back as I filled my bucket up, but I'm getting back to my diet and meditation, and my symptoms are going away again. Yeah, Douglas, I think that's so true, that when things come up in our lives, I kind of consider, and I think most people with gastroparesis might relate, like I kind of consider my digestive tract to be my weak link. So when things come up that put my body under stress, it's not surprising to me that, you know, that might be where I feel it first. You know, some people, they get headaches or back pain or insomnia or whatever their kind of weak link is. And I kind of consider for myself, and I think for a lot of people with gastroparesis, that's the GI tract. And so when things do come up, when you fill the bucket, thank you for referencing the bucket. We have really strong wind. Something just hit my window outside. Sorry, guys. Then that can definitely exacerbate your symptoms. And if you guys don't know what Douglas means by his bucket, if you go to livingwithgastroparesis.com and click on the blog, you can read my latest blog post, which was the gastroparesis symptom bucket. Okay, saw my specialist recently and prescribed nortriptyline, non-pain meds, warning pain decreased. Good, Juan. I'm glad that you found something that worked for you with your doctor. And working with a doctor for appropriate medical treatment is definitely part of a comprehensive management plan. Thank you for your feedback. You're welcome, Elizabeth. Pamela. Ooh, Pamela lives in Chile. Absolutely loving seeing you face to face. Thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for being here, Pamela. All right. Any other questions? Actually, I'll speak a little bit to something I haven't really talked about yet, but well, since Elizabeth mentioned her mom being sick and with a cold and that making the GP worse, and Douglas mentioned that his symptoms came back when he filled his bucket up, I have talked a lot recently about the resolution of my symptoms and the normalization of my gastric emptying. I had a couple of things happen back to back at the beginning of this year that I kind of noticed a resurgence of symptoms as well. So I'll talk a little bit about that and my approach and what I'm noticing. I had a miscarriage in the early part of this year, and then followed very, very quickly by a terrible stomach bug, like really bad norovirus. And those two things together, I noticed, like I said, the weak part of my system is my GI tract. And so while I would, you know, I don't know that my, you know, gastric emptying time necessarily was abnormal again, but I definitely had a resurgence of the fullness, the bloating, mostly that, a little bit of nausea, and what I did about it was just go back to a comprehensive management plan, everything that I know works, and something I actually talk about in here, which I think is good advice that I followed, is like to not freak out about it, you know, to recognize that like I get what's happening and I do what I'm gonna do, and you know, things are gonna get better over time, just like they always do. Like just like this burn's gonna go away, and that's what's been happening. So I've been taking my own advice. And getting back to what I consider my new normal, which is pretty much symptom-free and eating all kinds of stuff. So, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Janine. Julian says, since becoming diagnosed with POTS, my GP management has become lower on my list of priorities due to the severity of other symptoms related to the POTS. Any tips on healing the autonomic nervous system as a whole? Ooh, I wish I did. I would shout that one from the rooftops. But yeah, that's a blog post. I think that's a blog post. I think that's something that I will think about and put together a blog post on, because you know, obviously, Julian, you know from being in the community, like you're not alone. There are tons of people dealing with various issues related to the autonomic nervous system, not just gastroparesis. So you know, I mean, I think like the obvious one that comes to mind, right, is to get your body in rest and digest as often as you can, whether that means through hypnosis, through you know, meditation, there are a lot of like tricks that you can do, like just strange things that kind of activate that part of the autonomic nervous system. Sometimes singing, like weird things like that I've heard of. But yeah, that's something I'll consider for a future blog post. That takes a little bit more thought for me than just a quick nap time video. Not my nap time, my daughter's nap time. All right, any other questions? I think I got just a couple more minutes if anybody has any other questions. So just to reiterate, the point of this video was to share this book with you guys, and that you know that's a good resource, and that it is pretty consistent with what I teach about a comprehensive management plan. And if you're looking for kind of a condensed version of, that's actually good. This is pretty much what this is. This is pretty much a condensed version of like everything you would find on my website and through my work. She talks a lot about all aspects of a comprehensive management plan. So I'm a fan of this book. I recommend it. I live in New Orleans. I did the 4-hour test 4 years ago. The doc was vague about my results. Should I repeat the test? That's something to talk about with your doctor. I personally don't think that there is, depending on, I think there are reasons to repeat the gastric emptying scan. If there's medication involved, if there's going to be some kind of additional treatment like a neurostimulator, if there's some question about if symptoms are resolving. Like in my case, I had a repeat scan last April because my symptoms seemed to be gone, so we just wanted to see. But I think in general, you know, going by your symptoms is really the most important thing to measure progress, because some people are going to have nearly normal gastric emptying and really severe symptoms. So I think if there's a reason in terms of treatment to know for sure what the gastric emptying is like, then repeating the scan is important. If you can go by your symptoms, and you already have I think an initial one is obviously very important, because there are a lot of conditions that have very similar symptoms to gastroparesis, and I'm very wary when people say, you know, I was diagnosed with gastroparesis and I didn't have a gastric emptying scan. I think a gastric emptying scan is vital when you're first diagnosed, but I don't think that repeating the scan is necessarily indicated unless there's, like I said, a treatment reason. Terry, thank you for the encouraging morning message on International Women's Day. Thank you. Happy International Women's Day, everybody. Kathy, do you have a link to the book? I will put a link to the book in the comments after I end the video. Is drinking a lot of water through the day a bad idea? Sherry. No, I think, you know, water is obviously like super important to health, and I think if you can drink the water without it impacting your symptoms and your intake of other food and drink, then it's not a bad idea at all. If you're drinking water and that's causing you not to be able to get an adequate nutrition through other food and drink, then I think that is an issue where you might want to switch to more nutrient-dense liquids, and maybe just decrease the amount of water that you're drinking along with meals, sip water throughout the day. Some people don't have any trouble with water. Some people have a ton of trouble with water. So, excuse me. If you're drinking a lot of water and it's not impacting your management, then I think that's great, and I think you're well off for that. Mandy, how do you feel about coffee? Coffee is, it's another one of these things that some people find it really helpful, because some people drink a cup of coffee in the morning and they find that it helps to move their bowels, which then can help your gastroparesis symptoms. If you are constipated, that is absolutely impacting your management of gastroparesis, totally. So for some people, it's important in that way, right? Like it helps them in the morning to move their bowels, and then their gastroparesis symptoms may be a little bit better. For some people, it's really irritating to the GI tract. So I think it's always worth doing a trial of not drinking coffee and seeing if you feel better. If you do, that's a pretty good indication that, you might need to lay off of it for a while. And I stress for everything, like for a while. I don't think anything with gastroparesis is forever. And so anything you're doing to manage your gastroparesis right now, I really encourage you to look at it as something you're doing to manage your gastroparesis right now. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you're going to do forever. So a trial of, seeing if it helps you not to drink coffee, I think is always a good idea. Also keeping in mind, I don't think in general that more than a cup or two of coffee a day is a good idea, especially if you're having trouble sleeping, which a lot of people with gastroparesis do. It can take up to 12 hours to metabolize the caffeine, and if your gastric emptying is slow, it can possibly, take longer. I mean, probably not, because it's absorbed out of your stomach, but 12 hours is a good time. So if, I try not to drink coffee after like 10 a.m. Vanessa, are freeze-dried fruits bad for gastroparesis? I know dried fruit is a no-no, but what about freeze-dried fruits? I think some of the freeze-dried fruits, if I'm thinking of what you're thinking of, they kind of like melt in your mouth. So I would think those would be better, much better than dried fruits, certainly. So, you still want to be cognizant of like the fiber content, but if I'm thinking of what you're thinking of, then, those are things like I gave my daughter when she was little, right? Because they kind of like melt in your mouth and disintegrate. Then I think those would be fine. Any types of corn bad? Cornmeal syrup. Some gluten-free products are made with cornmeal. Again, Christy, some people do fine with corn. Some people find that it kind of exacerbates their symptoms. You want to always check the fiber content. Corn syrup, I'm not a huge fan of. It's high in fructose. That can definitely exacerbate bloating, and there's no nutritional quality to it. So I recommend avoiding corn syrup anyway. But products like if you're gonna have like a pasta, for example, that's maybe like a gluten-free pasta that has quinoa and corn. Those, as I remember, are pretty low in fiber, and so something like that would probably be fine unless you have a specific sensitivity to corn. Kathy says, I miss salads. I missed salads too for like a decade. I was eating a salad a couple of weeks ago, and my dad was like, didn't you used to say you would just like give anything to eat a salad? And it was true. So never say never, Kathy. April says, you've helped me so much. I'm doing so much better now. I can eat more solid food and have gained back 20 pounds of the 50 I lost. April, I'm so happy to hear that. Tanya, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. How to work out with gastroparesis. There's an article on my website if you go to livingwithgastroparesis.com and search walking, my secret weapon. I talk a lot about walking because I think it's the best exercise for gastroparesis, but I also talk about general guidelines, which are basically mild to moderate physical activity. Longer kind of less intense tends to be better for people with gastroparesis than really intense short workouts. And you might have to vary the time of day depending on when you're least symptomatic, or some people like to actually do it when they're more symptomatic because it helps to alleviate symptoms. Mary says, normal gastric emptying study. Took 5 years. So excited to hear that, Mary. Is it bad to drink liquids while eating, especially due to bloating? There are different schools of thought. Some say that drinking while you're eating dilutes your stomach juices and makes digestion more difficult. Some people find that they can eat more if they drink a little bit with it. This is one of those things where I don't think anybody can say for sure what's right for any one person. So if you find that you bloat a lot more if you drink liquids while you're eating, then I would put liquids an hour or so after a meal. Hi Missy, good to see you too. Well, good to see your name. Remedies for chronic constipation. Morgan, have you taken the constipation class? I feel like you may have. But if you have not, if you go to my website and go to livingwithgastroparesis.com, click on classes, there's a understanding and managing constipation class. I think it's about an hour. It's totally free, and it's a class that you can download and watch whenever, and has lots of information about constipation and managing constipation. Karen, thank you for your positive spin as always. Thank you. Oh, and thank you for your condolences. Julie says, there's hope for salad. I couldn't have it for over a year, and now I eat it once a week. 2 thumbs up for salad. Yeah, there's hope for everything. That's kind of, I think, my message, right? And that's been my message for a long time. That's kind of like my only real thing about this book that really kind of bothered me was when I read my interview. I don't know if I can find it in here real quick, but I think something I said was taken like a little bit out of context. It said, when I had my gastric emptying scan, it said, my doctor was not surprised at my results, but I was very surprised. And it basically said, I had trouble believing that I could get better, which is not true. I don't know how, I'm not saying that she took, you know, she wrote something I didn't say, but I think it might have been a little out of context, because I've believed from the beginning that this is not necessarily a forever thing. So, yeah, I think that's it for today, guys. So I will put a link to this book in the comments. I'll also stick links to Eating for Gastroparesis and Living Well with Gastroparesis in case you guys are interested in those. And I'll throw a link in there too for the coaching and support group that I mentioned in case you want to do more of these with me twice a month and get some support from peers and coaching in between. So that's it for today, guys, and hopefully I'll be able to jump on again sometime soon, and we'll chat about something else. Have a great day, guys.